In part 3 of the Real Beginner's Guide, I will show you how to get up to speed and also show you how you learn a new racetrack and what's the best or at least most efficient way to practice your car on a racetrack and much more, so stay tuned. So in part 1 and part 2 I showed you the first settings, the first time you get into the game, how you get started, what the best options are to pick your car and also to start doing track medals. And now it is time to take it up a notch. By now I hope you found the one car that you feel comfortable in and you want to continue with racing, but don't worry. If you're still unsure, stick with the car that feels best to you and just continue practicing with it. If you then switch to another car at a later point, like for example I've switched around between 2 or even 3 cars, it doesn't really matter that much because all the experience you gain and all the practice you do and all the feeling and muscle memory you build up will help you once you switch to another car. So as a sim racing beginner, especially in Assetto Corsa Competizione, you might now be at a point after doing some track medals, after having picked your car, what to do next? How do you improve your pace? How do you step up your game? How do you become more confident? How can you really get up to speed to kind of take your first steps into multiplayer racing? So the most important thing here to know is there is lots of different ways you can practice, but only, so many of them are, I don't want to say the right way, but are a good and efficient way to help you get up to speed and, improve your feeling in the car and get down on those lap times. So when it comes to practicing and learning racetracks and feeling more confident in your car, as a beginner, I definitely recommend you using the hot lap mode in single player if you want to practice a track with your car to improve your lap times and even to get to know the racetrack. So for this, we jump into the hot lap mode and I'll show you the settings and what you need to do to get started with your practice. So before we get started with more practice in hot lap mode, there is one important thing you need to do if you have not done so far. As I recommended in part 1 and part 2, it's now time to adapt the assists, and the way I'm using it right now is like this, and this is definitely what I recommend you now is the point to step up the game and deactivate most of the assists. So gearbox of course is manual that you shift on your own. Clutch is basically the only thing I still have on automatic because it's just makes life a bit easier when you lose the car on the track to restart the engine and so on. So if you want to really get the most realistic experience, also put this on manual, but depending on what pedals do you have and how you want to do, let's just keep it on automatic, and then the rest, engine start, wipers, lights and pit limiter are on manual. And you need to make sure that you have buttons for this on your steering wheel, that in case it gets dark you turn on the lights, in case it starts raining you turn on the wipers, but you need to get used to this. So just put them all on manual, deactivate the stability control and also hide the ideal race line. Yes, you heard right. We are going to learn new racetracks without the ideal race line. And how you do that is what I'm going to show you in a bit. And let's just confirm that and hop into the single player. We select the hot lap mode and I recommend here the following settings. Put around 11 o'clock, disable the ghost car. Because in the beginning you want to focus on yourself, you want to focus on the track, so having a ghost car lap after lap after lap that shows you what you have done is very much irritating. So let's just deactivate that. Click confirm, and then for the weather and track conditions, we kind of want to just either go with the clear preset that will probably make it really warm for you, but if you want to have like a little bit more realistic temperatures, choose the cloudy preset and just go back there and then pick the car you want and pick the track you want to learn and you are settled. But now we are at the point where you probably ask yourself, how do I learn a racetrack I have no clue about? There are many different approaches on how you learn a racetrack, and I don't think there is the best way. So I would say there is the best way for you, and I'm just gonna share how I did it, the things I tried, so that you can also try these things for yourself and see if that works for you. If not, then just feel free to experiment. So what I did, for example, when the new 2020 DLC with the Imola racetrack came to Assetto Corsa Competizione, I was a bit nervous because I had no idea about Imola. I've never raced on this track in any game because I was not really a sim racer before I started with Assetto Corsa Competizione. And what I did then was, when they had their launch preview like a day before, I was watching the various different live streamers, you know, driving the laps, and I looked at a lot of different streamers and just watched them doing their laps on the stream on board in their car to see where are the brake markers, where do I need to brake, are the turns tight or not, which gear should I probably shift down, when can I accelerate, which are the turns where I need to coast or need to be more careful, which sections look like I'm in danger to losing the car, and so on. And what I did is actually I just wrote it all down on paper. All my impressions with the turns, where kind of the brake marker is, what to look out for, and then I took these handwritten notes and put them in a Word document. And then actually from this moment on, I'll just, from time to time, kept on reading through it. And you know how it is, like, back in school with cheating, when you do your little papers where you write down maybe some top secret stuff to help you with your next tests. When you've done that, you kind of don't need it anymore. And that's what actually I'm doing this for, because it helped me really a lot with remembering Imola. And when the game then came out, the DLC and the new track, I was able to hop into the car and just take the first laps, not so slow, but already at a really good pace. So this is definitely a very important tip for you. And if you want to go more in depth, there are already a bunch of track and lap guides online. Now, I have some of them already in my channel, which are a bit more focused also around beginners, with, not showcasing alien times, whatever. So with stuff that maybe I did not as good as I could have done on my best lap, but still showing you the way around the track. And I have 3 so far, which are for Misano, Kyalami, and also Imola. And the way you can research now is you also just go on YouTube and check what lap guides or track guides are out there to get a feeling for a new track. But when you search like that, you will notice that there are a lot of like hot laps and track guides with really crazy lap times. So never get yourself under so much pressure to reach those times. I would actually say never really pay attention to the times the so-called aliens who usually do these lap and track guides do, because you will not be able to reach these times. Of course, later on there are a good indicator to where you are standing, but right now in the beginning, don't be shocked. Do not pay attention to these times. Just pay attention to which line they take on the racetrack and write it down. Try to memorize it, and try to drive with them. And if you want to know more about the racetrack, there are really in-depth lap guides that show you a lot of different brake markers, give you tips and hints, like I do in my videos, on what you should look out for when you approach a turn, where the apex is, how you take a corner, and so on. But in the beginning, it might be easier for you to just watch like a hot lap track guide or lap guide that just basically has the driver in the cockpit view, driving around the track, setting an alien lap time. But you can use that as your indicator to find your own markers and find your own break points to then head into the hot lap mode and start practicing the track in your car. One important feature to help you along practicing a new racetrack is the rating feature of car control. You manually can set this up in the settings, and this is amazing because it will help you guide you on your way to see if you're overdriving and over pushing the car and which sections, which turns you are taking slower than you should. So don't focus too much on it, like really have your focus on learning and kind of practicing the track according to what you saw in the lap guide and according to your notes. But when you approach that feeling where you can get comfortable and, you know, increase the speed, definitely take the car control rating more serious and into consideration to see where you can improve. Also, another thing you might notice in the beginning is that you will approach every turn of the track you're practicing separately, meaning you're focusing on every turn. Left, then maybe a straight, then right, and then a left, and then a straight, and then a chicane, and then a straight, and then a left. So this is also absolutely normal as a beginner, and what you need to learn quickly is that a racetrack does not consist of turns and straights. They are actually put together in sectors or the so-called sections that you also have for timing, but they are not always restricted to like the sector 1, sector 2 and sector 3 where you have the timings on a racetrack, but you can find your own sections on a racetrack where you have to focus on finding the perfect line going through this section and not turn by turn by turn. One of the good examples is Nürburgring. When you come down the straight and approach the first corner, you will notice that it's not only the first corner actually. You're braking, and while you're accelerating you already have to position the car on the right to take it into the next left turn, get a good drive out of there, and again position the car for the next left-hander, which is pretty tight, and then again position the car for the next right-hander to take enough speed out of there. And this is actually one of the longest sectors on a racetrack. Another really good example is Barcelona, when you approach the first turn, which is as well a combination of a right-hander and a left-hander to position your car into a long and fast right-hander. And the same can be said for Kyalami when you come down the straight, where you have the braking zone for the first left-hander, which is really tight corner, and when you come out you need to position the car again for the next section, which is a combination of a right and a little left, and then a braking zone turning into another left before you can settle in and have the car go on to the next straight line. Now again, in the beginning it is totally fine to just approach every turn by itself and just focus on the one turn, get the car across, brake earlier, coast through the corner, accelerate at the exit of the corner, and just rinse and repeat. So don't stress yourself now on every track to find all the sectors to perfectly align the car. Just go with what you see in the lap and track guides, what you have noted down, and find your way around the track. Also, a very important thing is always check your own replays. If you are approaching a point where you are not sure if you're taking the right line, if there's enough space on the curbs, are you really using all of the track limits that the track and lap guide suggested, use the replay. Just look at the laps, what your car did, and always use the outside perspective so that you can see what was going on, how was the car in the turn, what was going on with the track limits, is there more room to use for the track. This is really crucial in the beginning, to just compare yourself to the lap and track guides and to the line the faster drivers are taking, to see what you are doing wrong and where you need to improve. So you have picked your track that you want to learn, you have enabled the hot lap mode, so now it's time to jump into the session. And the important thing for you about hot lap mode is that your tires won't have any degradation, you will not use up any fuel, and the track conditions will not change. So this is why I only recommend hot lap mode to practice a track until you feel confident. and comfortable that you will be able to race on the track in a quick race or either multiplayer. So never use the hot lap mode for like race practice or you know, finding the perfect setup, because in a race environment the track conditions are never the same and you will have to adapt really quickly. So for the basics and learning the track we are fine, but for learning like for racing, for race practice, overtaking opponents, everything that has to do with racing, we are going to utilize another practice mode. But this time around we are jumping into hot lap, and now actually this is the perfect time to at least come up with like base aggressive setups, and also now is the time for you to switch to the aggressive setup. So what you do is you pick the aggressive preset setup, and you will notice that the game already tries to come up with like tire pressures that will match the temperature that is on track, and gives you like an overview and little tweaks and setup settings that should work for you. So I recommend you keep most of them. There are just a few important things that you should change. And one of these things, of course, here is front brakes and rear brakes set. You want to put this to the brake set 1, because brake set 1 is the best when it comes down to sprint races and races up until 3 hours. You only use brake set 2 for endurance races, 12 or 24 hours. So always go back to 1. There is not much more you can set in hot lap mode because it doesn't use any tires or fuel. You check the mechanical grip tab, and there is actually at the moment nothing to change, so don't get confused. We ignore the dampers. And in aero, actually, the only really interesting thing for you are the brake ducts. Depending on the temperature, you want to either open them up or close them down. Meaning when it's colder, you want to close them down so that the brakes can keep their temperatures. And when it's warmer, you want to open them up so the brakes get better cooling and your tires do not overheat. Because what happens is the brake ducts kinda restrict the airflow to the brakes. And what that does is it directly influences your tire temperature and tire pressure. So meaning the more you close them down, the hotter your brakes get and the warmer your tires can get, and therefore influence your tire pressure. And this is the thing we want to keep an eye on now in hot lap mode, is because we are able to at least adapt the tire pressures a little bit to get to the window of around 27.5 to 27.7 psi hot for the current track temperature. And that is why I always recommend you saving this base aggressive setup with the air and track temperature, so that you will have an easier time to adapting tire pressures later on. So you see, I'll just call it base aggro. Air temperature is 23, track temperature is 27. And that's what we just use to get now on the track, do our first few laps, and just, you know, learn the track and see how it goes. So the important thing now, when you're heading into the hot lap mode and you're feeling confident after watching some track and lap guides, to now learn the track for yourself and, you know, get into practicing it, is really take it as slow as you need in the beginning. You know, do not push the car. Activate the car control rating and then focus on the line that you saw in the videos and in the track guides, and really just take it slow in the first few laps. Brake a bit earlier, release the brake pedal once you notice you might be too early on brakes. Just be careful on the throttle and focus on the race line. You know, find the apex of the turn, turn in your car, coast through the corners, and really have your attention on staying on the race line and using the track limits like you saw in the track and lap guide videos and the notes you have taken. Don't stress yourself to reach any specific lap time. Focus on being clean, having control over your car, staying on track, looking for certain brake markers to find where you need to brake, and always, you know, do not try to push for the brake markers you have seen in maybe some of the alien lap and track guides. use them as an indicator and always start to brake early and see how the feeling in the car is and how you can brake, and then focus on really a clean exit after the corner, accelerating the car, not necessarily, you know, go full mayhem and push the pedal to the metal, but just slowly take it step by step and just approach the track, as I said, in different sections and find your rhythm. And if it's just too much for you in one lap to focus on everything, take it like a step-by-step approach. For example, just focus on the first few turns in the first few laps. And if you feel confident, just, you know, focus on the next section and just, you know, coast the rest of the track. Do not push yourself to have a perfect lap after lap after lap. You know, just take your time, because you need to build up the muscle memory and in general, you know, the memory of the track, because you need to know what is coming up. You should never drive blindly into another section or a corner without knowing what comes up, because that will just end in tears and make it even harder. You should reach the point where you know which turn is coming up, where you need to position your car to have the best way through this corner. And as I said, use the replay. Always check how your racing line looked. Did you get close enough to the inside of the curbs? Did you use track limits on the exit? Where did you position the car? Were you unsettling the car? Really make use of the replay function to compare yourself and the race line that you learned, to see where you are missing out. And then always take notes, place the notes next to you, and while you're going on the next laps, always keep the notes next to you to just really always be able to quickly check where you need to have your focus and what you should do better. So you maybe also might ask yourself, well, which tracks should I learn in the beginning? So there are more popular laps in multiplayer racing and competitive racing leagues you might want to focus on in the beginning, which are like Spa-Francorchamps, Nürburgring, Silverstone, Monza, so Barcelona. So already 5 tracks you can put your focus on and getting in some lap times with your car. And if you're still not sure which car feels good to you, there are just, you know, a handful of cars that I can really recommend for beginners that have a good feeling and, you know, are reliable to drive. And that's actually the Aston Martin V8, the Audi R8, and interestingly enough, also the Bentley, which might look like a heavy boat, but it's an amazing, gentle and very stable car to drive. So I would definitely recommend you try one of these 3 cars to see if it suits your driving style and if you feel comfortable in it. And now remember, take it slow. Always focus on clean and smooth laps. Never overdrive and overpush the car to like try and break any speed records, and just focus on having this base aggressive setup like I have shown you, to just get settled on tire pressures and be ready for the next step, which is quick racing and race weekends in single player with the AI to push your ratings and increase your feeling and start to get competitive for the multiplayer mode and several racing leagues and racing communities. But that's the topic for the next part. Thank you so much for watching, and if you haven't done so far, please consider subscribing to my channel and click the like if you enjoyed the video to not miss any upcoming live streams and more videos that I will do on this channel. So stay tuned for part 4 of the Real Beginner's Guide. Feel free to give me feedback in the comment sections how you enjoyed the video, what was, you know, the best part for you, and if there's anything else you would like to see in my next upcoming parts. I see you on track. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.